And then I'm going to go live here. Tell me if you see anything coming up.
Oh, on the channel?
Yeah. Let me go next.
Let me get over to it.
Kentucky Derby preview.
Yes, we're live. It's me staring at my phone.
Oh, okay, so we're live. Hey, we're still working through some of this. So welcome to the OptixEQ Kentucky Derby preview. We're going to go take a look at a couple of things. Look at the early plot, and just remember, everyone, it's early, so it's going to change probably 4 or 5 times, during that period. So you got to just make sure of that. To keep checking back with us and look at the plot changes, because there'll be scratches and that changes the dynamics. Go through a little bit about plot trends, maybe some of the preps, and talk about a little bit about speed figures, and then go kind of horse by horse, Emily. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay, but most importantly, the first thing we need to do is get an update on Frost.
Yeah.
Poor Greyhound.
Poor Frost Optics. Yeah, so we went to a new dog park. It's one that I had to get a different vaccine for him and different pass and all that. But it's one that's like a big open grass field, which is what he loves. And so we were there. We were like the first ones there, and he was like having a blast because it's been kind of a rough winter. Running like full speed, and some other dogs started showing up. And this place is like massive. So we'd been there maybe like 30 minutes, and an owner was bringing a dog in. And the dog parks, it's pretty standard where they have like 2 gates. There's like the gate from the street, and there's like a little pen area, and then there's a second gate into the park, and that's like where you unleash your dog, and then they can run. And so I watched Frost the whole time. Like when we're at the park, just, I don't know. I like watching him. He's a cool dog, fun to watch. So I saw, he was kind of over with some of the other dogs, and the other dog coming in and kind of went with that group, as most dogs do when like a new dog is coming in to like greet. So that dog kind of instantly, with those other dogs, like went right at Frost. They kind of like growled like real quick, and instantly Frost was like crying bloody murder. And from where I was, maybe like 50 feet away, even though I saw like the whole thing, I can see like there's a white patch on his side, and I can't tell what it is. I just know, I'm like, something happened. Best case scenario is like, this is like, slobber, but it's massive. So, I go over and there's a big cut, and the owner, he's coming in. He's like, "Hey, your dog has a scratch." I'm like, "Yeah, your dog just bit him. Your dog just bit him." He's like, "Oh, I thought that was already there. I thought maybe you guys had just had surgery." And I'm like, "No, your dog like just bit him." And so then, obviously, and like grabbing Frost, he's like, "Oh, let me give you my card. Let me follow you out." So, I grab Frost, like go to the car. I'm like, I'm still new here. I don't know it's Saturday morning, 7 o'clock. I don't know what the fuck vet is open 24 hours. Like, I have no clue. I'm like, I don't know what is going on. I'm looking on my phone, for stuff. He's helping me. Yeah. So, and instantly that whole thing. So anyways, we ended up having to go into Chicago, and there was a big vet, and they handled it. So he has stitches, and we had to go to the vet this morning because I noticed, I took him out to go to the bathroom. Fed him, gave him his medication. I noticed there was like some fluid buildup, like not on the incision site, but like down like on his like chest cavity. And so like as we're talking about this, and especially as we talk about like horses Kentucky Derby workouts, the big thing you're looking for is change, right? So I noticed there's like this change, like this wasn't there before. So I'm like, all right, we'll go to our regular vet, and like, if it's something bad, let's get it sorted. If it's nothing, I can deal with like being the hypochondriac dog parent. That's fine. So get them checked out, and at least they can see, our regular vet, so they can, see what's kind of going on. And luckily they were able to see him like without appointment, and did an ultrasound, and then did some like laser therapy, and did some other like treatment, and just got it checked out. So yeah, he's resting now, but it'll be like another rough. He's getting his sutures removed. The Thurby, he was getting him out on Thurby. So it'll be a rough period of time until then.
Oh, well, we hope the best for him.
You can see him in
he's
the back.
resting back there. See?
Yeah.
I
don't know how to point to him, but he's over my shoulder. Oh, there we go. So that way. Yeah. So anyways, let's get to the other stuff.
All right. Well, we'll get to the action here. And so I'm going to, first of all, let me see if I can get this to work a little bit. Let me get again, a little bit new with this kind of stuff. If you do have like access to the Derby with our stuff, well, actually, this is the grid. Let me get to the plot. I'm a little slow here this morning.
Well, I surprised John. He wasn't expecting us to go live, and I thought we were going live. So we're just getting it together. Bear with us. We got good information. Plus, I think people want to see this plot. So
yeah, I do too.
Sit tight.
Okay, so I got logged out of here. Okay. There's the plot is like small. So what I do have a blow up of the plot, so I could show you that too. But let me just.
Well, while you're doing that, there is a comment. It says trainer weight listed in the grid at some point? ? Trainer weight. Do you mean like the jockey weight listed in the grid? Yeah, that's something. It's something we can add. You know, it's funny because there's like a lot of those little features and it's stuff that we don't necessarily think is super important. That's why it's not there. But I think that to some, especially at a lot of the. Like an Indiana Grand, which I've been handicapping a lot, where sometimes like intention and getting in, like there's a horse, like a 3-year-old with a 10-pound apprentice, this horse at Indiana Grand that's getting in with like 110 pounds versus the other ones that are getting in at 126. Having that information's, useful. But it's, it's so last tier, you want to make sure the horse is fast, can get the right pace, right class, in the right form. Once you check those boxes, then, those little, like, is it going to move the horse up, like, a tenth of a length, maybe.
Okay. All right. See what we got here. Oh, that's wrong. Excuse me. Okay.
Well, kind of a useful plot in the meantime. Maybe one of our favorites.
Yeah, those are the prep races. Talk amongst yourselves.
There's no more comments in the meantime. We get the plot pulled up. But, the plot we're looking at right now, the Bluegrass, the most recent prep, Zandon winning that race. We can see the Optics notes grade, a B+, had a big square sort of in the middle, and also kind of shows, Zandon is a lightly raced horse. We'll get into him as we go through horse by horse. But even just kind of shown on the plot, kind of has some versatility in his running style with that finishing ability that can maybe be a little bit close. Looking at that plot fit, snowflake contention, lighter.
I'm sorry, Emily. I switched the plots on you.
Anyway, we can go back horse by horse.
Yeah, we will. So this is, and we'll look at some of those preps. I have kind of result plots for those if people are interested, and I'll put them up on the website. But this is the kind of standard plot. I just cut the plot out just so you know. We usually plot 2 by 2, right? We have this surface and distance, and kind of the standard we call, and that's kind of recency. Well, with the Derby, as in years past, every year pretty much, there's no surface and distance one because they're all trying to distance for the first time. So just for eye test wise, I took the standard and kind of cut it out so it's a little bit bigger, so it's a little bit easier to read. It's still an eye test. There's currently 28 entries. The field's going to get down to 20. And so, that's kind of what it is right now.
But it's kind of keeping that up and looking at the plot. A lot of those outside horses, you can see they're kind of in quadrant 4. So they're not really going to make other than 26 who right. Sort of in quadrant 1. But for the most part, a lot of those horses are down in quadrant 4. So as we kind of look at this from a pace perspective, it's not really going to change that much, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's correct. So, again, if you look at the way the numbers are kind of laid out right now, they're in the order of, ranking, in terms of the points. So epicenter is kind of number one, and you can see it's hard to kind of see, and we'll see when we go horse by horse. I'll show you where their kind of quadrant shape is, and what quadrant they're in as we go horse by horse. But he's kind of buried underneath some horses in there. And what I really want to just kind of get a feel for the plot, because I want to show you a heat map of past Kentucky Derbies. I think it's important to understand where the winner has been come from. This is a winner's heat plot. So all the greens are the winners since 2000. I think we've been doing this since 2008 or 9. I always forget. But each of those numbers represents the year the horse won. So you can see for the majority part of it, all those horses have come out of quadrant 1, with few exceptions. I think you had Mind That Bird was in quadrant 3. I'm trying to think of that Pletcher horse, Emily, that never won ever again. It was like kind of the horses that were outliers.
Always Dreaming.
Always Dreaming, thank you. And then the one out here all the way to the right was, that was the year, I guess, was the disqualification. Was this horse Country Home or something like that?
Country House.
Country House. So, I mean, you can see
there's two of us here.
You can see that, most of the winning is coming in quadrant 1. That may change this year. We'll see. There's a little bit, maybe more pace pressure, but again, you got to kind of wait till this thing all kind of hashes out. But that kind of shows you, Emily, where kind of past derbies where these horses have been, the winners have been coming from. There's a heat map comparing the first, second, third place finishes, squares versus circles. So it just shows you squares are much more dominant in terms of finishing in the money. You just see there's just quantity-wise, there's a lot more. And they're coming from multiple quadrants versus if you look over to the right, the circles are pretty much in quadrants 1 and 2. And in fact, with the exception of one, and that was Mind That Bird, which was, I would say, an outlier. He's the only horse in Derby since 2008 to finish in the money as a Q3 circle. So no Q4 circles. And that makes sense, right? Because if people who are new to optics plot circle versus square, square is the better finisher. You want to be able to be finishing at 1.25 miles on the first Saturday in May. So that's kind of makes sense. But a visual, just to kind of get his sense as you start going through plots, as the plots start changing, what's really important? Well, being a square and being quadrant 1 are kind of important. There was one other thing I wanted to just point out because I thought it was a little bit sneaky. This is second place finishers, and there's a cluster down here. So don't forget quadrant 4. We had some really horses outrun their odds as quadrant 4 squares. So that's something you just kind of maybe want to pay attention to as we go through this. So that's just something to watch out. Some quadrant 4 squares finishing in the exacta because they can finish in the exacta big prices. But again, Q1 and squares are the most important thing, like most of the time in optics, but pretty pronounced in the Derby. So, all right, Emily, what do you want to do? We want to go shoot over to, let me get back to this. Really having a little struggle here with getting to the, back to the, okay. All right, give me a second here.
Okay.
In the meantime, Emily, why don't we just, I'm going to put this up. We can talk to a little bit. These are the optics speed figures for the, major preps. Why don't you just talk to that? And I'm just going to.
Yeah, I mean, the Wood Memorial you have on top, and I know that you were extremely impressed with that race as a whole. I mean, as somebody that, and I was telling Ben, our friend, who owns Frost's best friend, Sophie, that you've been following New York since you were a boy. you know this New York circuit. You know how these tracks play, and you were so impressed with that race. From like a speed figure, how fast Mo Donegal came home, just like the overall race. I know you told me multiple times, and I take notice of that because you and I talk a lot. So if you're telling me that you're really impressed with a certain thing, it's something you haven't seen in a long time. And that race kind of right on top. I don't know if you want to expand on that, but similar.
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple things about that. First of all, yeah, I think it came back fast. I just kind of glanced at other speed figures like Briss and Time Form, and I think it came back fast. It was really got a low buyer figure, which I was surprised. But whatever. When you just look at this raw time of that race, Emily, it's the fastest Wood Memorial since I think it was Bellamy Road, which was way back, and I think he ran a buyer figure of 120 going into the Derby, and he went off the favorite, and ran 6 that day, and that was the only concern I had is the number too fast because he did work so hard. He got kicked back in the race, Mo Donegal. Early voting ran huge. My only concern is, does that race take a lot out? Now, there was one horse that's come back over the weekend and ran out of that race and really disappointed at like 1 or 2 to 5. But I don't know. I just raw time wise, and that just knowing that track and how fast it was that day, it might have been a little fast, but there's no reason to believe that wasn't just a huge race. And that'd be my only concern. Does that race take something out of the horse? That's the only thing I could think of. So again, it's one of the fastest Wood Memorials of all time. The last time a horse that won the Kentucky Derby out of the Wood Memorial was Fusaichi Pegasus. I think that was the year 2000. So it's been a while since the Wood Memorial has been relevant, but I think it's relevant this year. And in fact, that was the last time I was at a Wood Memorial live. I was transitioning, moving from New York to Minnesota at the time, and I had to come back for something, and that was the last Wood Memorial. And I was impressed with that one. I was really high on that horse. Obviously, he went off as the favorite in the Derby. That was the last really kind of relevant one.
Yeah, and I mean the Santa Anita Derby came back, as fast with the 107. And I mean, you could almost maybe we're going to have to make the same case. Does it take too much out of him with Taiba and only his second start? And his second start was the first time around 2 turns, and it gets tricky with a horse like this because even though it's Tim Yakteen is the trainer, I think we all understand what's going on here. You have to treat him as a Bob Baffert horse. I was talking to somebody before, like I did personal training for years, coach CrossFit. If there was ever a time where I was out of town and somebody had to come in and sub for me as a trainer, I wrote up the program. Like we talked and was like, here's what here's what this client does. Here's what we do. Do this. There's no like deviation. There's no like, oh, this person took him over. We're doing the same plan. I mean, when it's a claim, that's obviously something different. But this case, I mean, I think you have to consider, a Baffert horse, and they typically, for him to run back to that effort would be no surprise. It's just, lack of experience.
Absolutely. And then the Jeff Ruby was kind of a surprising race. I think it's a pretty good race, actually, right? You had the second place winner come back and win the Lexington. Again, a different surface, so you got to take that with a grain of salt, but pretty fast time comparatively speaking for us. It was our third tie for our second or third highest there with the Louisiana Derby, which came 5 or 6 weeks ago. So, obviously there's kind of more upside probably in horses coming out of that race, but still, the other races really don't. I mean, they really don't compare with the Wood Memorial, the Derby. I mean, they seem to be way out front. Just from a speed figure perspective.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting once, I think you're going to pump the grid soon, but it'll be interesting too when we look at the grades to see if the grades kind of match that. If there was like B+ winners in that top flight versus kind of Bs in the Bluegrass Florida Derby. I think that is just such an edge to compare that with the speed figure.
Yeah. So anyway, let me just let me get the plot up here for now.
Okay. So question as far as the plot, maybe take out the last 6 horses, 23 to 28, as unlikely to get in. Yeah, I mean, the plot's not something that we like hand, do. It's we were dealing with the entries as they are. Once it becomes official, those horses will drop out. So yeah, I mean, they're in the plot today. We won't talk about them horse by horse. And in fact, I mean, just from a standpoint, I mean, something I'm considering. This year we might not even have 20 horses, to be honest.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, it's just something to consider as well.
Okay. Let's see. Now, am I able to move this? Okay.
Sorry.
That's all right.
All right. He has not done that, but we have a cone on now. We're good. Okay.
No, wait. We got. I'm still. I apologize for this. Kind of a little bit out of sync here. Something happened, and I'm trying this new stuff for the first time. So I don't know why this is such.
What was the problem with that grid? It looked fine. No.
It was, but I couldn't do anything with it.
Like
it wasn't
filters?
allow me to kind of change it or do anything with it. So I'm gonna try to bring this, share this again. Okay, finally got to what I need to get to here, I think. Let's see.
So that's for us licking his stitches. I'm sure everybody could see that. So little interruption.
Okay.
All right.
Did I get it up there? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Okay, so now here we go. I'm going to start off with, let's start off with epicenter, and we'll just go down the list, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So epicenter. All right, Emily. So epicenter, and I'll show you. Later. We'll get into it a little bit later. But I mean, if you look at some of these races that he came out of in Louisiana, he kind of got soft early paces. He's not going to get a soft early pace today. It's going to be completely different dynamic. He's a talented horse. He keeps improving. No knocks really, but it's going to get seriously tested for class with some of those other early quadrant one runners, don't you think?
Yeah. I mean, we saw that on the plot. It's not necessarily like he has that pace advantage as a circle in quadrant one, where he is below the par line. So we can even look on there and see if he's ever kind of been below the par line. Maybe that's a big change for him. But yeah, I mean, the concern even going into the Louisiana Derby, while we had mentioned on the video, and these videos are all archived so people can go back and watch, was kind of the lack of a big move forward. He's kind of had those little baby, speed figures, which is probably good. It's probably better, but now he's going to get tougher competition. You could look at the Optics figure range to where he's been before and now where he's going to be at today. And he's going to have to improve again. And could he win? Like, certainly. But, when you're looking at a horse that's likely to be the favorite, I was just kind of, catching up on the morning show, listening to the works. I mean, Scott and Joe are like, he's going to be like 3-1, 7-2, which I would be surprised if any horse is that short, but regardless, if you're looking at a horse as the favorite, you should, you really have to be extra critical, picking at any little thing. And he's got a few things to pick at. Yeah.
I mean, if he's that short, I'm shorting him in this race. That's for sure. The other thing is that when you get the grid, if it's a little confusing, I told you about that. If you go all the way to the right, it tells you where this horse is. He's in quadrant one, which is kind of where the winners come in, but he's a circle compared to some of the others. You'll see the two horses coming out of the California race going to be quadrant one square. So
wait, before we move on, did you see where he was when I was looking at that below the par line? This is a negative. The only other time he's been below the par line was his
this Emily's talking about, this negative here. That's being below the par line. So
that's another big knock, in my opinion. It's just showing that when he's against horses that are faster, and has to go a faster pace, he could be vulnerable.
Yeah, and I think he is.
Yeah.
Zandon, he's kind of another horse. I like the incremental improvement. He knocked heads with Mo Donegal, who came back and won the Wood. So really kind of an improving horse. I like the way he finished up in the Bluegrass. Figure came back a little light, but I still think there's room for upside. And it's a horse we always kind of liked. So I'm not kind of jumping off him, especially should get some pace to run at. But again, he's going to have to navigate a trip. And it's always difficult with 20-horse field. So you got to keep that in mind. But he's a contender. I don't know what fair odds I would make him at this point, but we'll see how he comes out of training over the next week. We'll see what happens and see who's left in from an early pace perspective.
Yeah, I think he's absolutely legitimate. I mean, from what you're seeing right there, I mean, you just have to like that. That's all good stuff.
Yeah, that's a good. It's a good form. Doesn't look like this horse has really hit his peak yet. He looks like he's definitely got another move forward. So he's a contender. The 3, White Barrio, kind of like a little bit like Epicenter, kind of been getting trips. And you can see the red keywords there, Emily. Perfect trip in the Holy Bull, and then the Florida Derby, another positive trip. He sat the trips. Another horse that's improving. He's done nothing a little wrong. I just think that he's going to get a different pace scenario this time.
Yeah. I mean, as far as the plot, and this is a horse that's always looked good on the plot, which is kind of why, he was given the push in the Holy Bull and the Florida Derbies, because he looks great on the plot. And he looks fine on the plot today. He's a square in quadrant 1, but a lot of that does have to do with the fact that he's been getting those perfect trips and sitting on soft paces. And if he does have to run a little bit faster early, that could take something out of the square. And that's obviously, when you're making the projection, is not something that's going to be shown on the plot.
Right. Number 4 is the horse that we've been following, kind of like he's done nothing wrong, and we talked about the Wood Memorial. Emily, again, my only concern is, does the race take something out of him? But we always thought that the 1.25 mile was in this horse's wheelhouse. It kind of looked like a legitimate one to me, and you can see some of the early keywords in his career. Marathon, meaning we thought he was going to go longer. You notice the stretch and stretch. I think we again did a good job kind of evaluating that Holy Bull race, right? We thought it was better than it looked, and he came back, and like I said, he took dirt in that race too in the wood, just ran his guts out. Showed a lot of class. I mean, he showed class in the Remsen and the Holy Bull. Every one of his races, this horse is always trying late. Again, he's another horse like Zandon. He's going to have to deal with finding the trip. That's the deal.
Yeah, I'm no knocks. I mean, maybe there is some regression, but this is kind of something we've always kind of said about this horse is, and even visually, watching the Wood Memorial, he kind of has like very healthy, kind of like he's a solid horse just in general, right? Looks like one that he can kind of take the demand. So, it wasn't just visually the type of effort that I'm like, it jumped out as a regress. I think it,
it doesn't. I mean,
make a good point that it is something that you do have to consider wheeling back off a top in 28 days. But I mean, it wouldn't be anything at this point that would make me, downgrade him from an A to where I currently have him.
I got you. Number 5, Tis the Bomb. I mean, kind of did nothing in the Holy Bull. That was on dirt, but he did get kicked back, and we suggested that he didn't handle the track, and he was probably better suited for turf. He didn't get turf, but he got synthetic, and he's kind of thrived there at Turfway Park. You got to remember that's a little bit less of a tier, but his speed figure came back really well. And, again, the second place winner came back and won Lexington. And we gave him an A- for that race. So we're kind of impressed. But is he a turf horse, Emily? Is dirt still a question mark?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of question marks. The class, the surface switch. As far as trip for him, I mean, he's a square in quadrant 4, so maybe, you could make the case for underneath. For a top, I know a lot of people kind of have him as like a wise guy, top pick type horse. I have a hard time kind of making him that, being like one of my top contenders, but certainly, for an underneath type, would want to have there.
Yeah, remember we said that quadrant 4 squares sometimes do very well underneath in exact. I mean, second place. Cyberknife, kind of were on this horse for the Arkansas Derby, but I don't know if he's peaked. Again, he's another horse that you see those reds tactics. He's gotten the trips, and I don't know, Emily, about you, but I question the way he kind of runs. There's some balance issues there with his back end. I think the way it kind of comes out, I'm a little iffy on him. I think he's might already peaked. I don't see him getting the same kind of trip again. He's going to be horse that kind of needs to be a little bit forward in the early pace scenario. There's going to be some faster horses, so I'm pretty much negative on this horse, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I watched his most recent work, and it looks a lot like the way that he races. Which, to your point, look, there's just something that's just a little bit off.
Off,
Um,
yeah.
And you're talking a full field. This is a different monster. We've talked about throughout the Oakland Park series how that was just kind of a weaker group all around.
Exactly.
So he had a good trip. He just earned a B. He was kind of the pick in that race, sort of by default, because there was like contenders, and it was like, well, at that point, it's math. Whichever one's the longest, and that was kind of where he landed. So. I'm kind of with you. I'm a little bit negative here.
Yeah. Crown Pride.
He's a circle in quadrant 1 too, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Crown Pride. This is the Japanese, so we don't have him plotted, obviously. But he won the Dubai race, and that one he ran pretty good. I mean, I thought he was really wide the whole trip. I don't know how the track was playing, and he didn't change leads, but he still was able to run down kind of a loose horse in that race, who's also in this race, I guess, right now. I think from points perspective, I don't know, but I think he is. But I don't know. I mean, it's hard to gauge some of these Japanese horses. I haven't yet gone back and looked at the video of the Japan races. I know you're going to send me that link.
I'm doing it right now. I just remembered.
Yeah.
I liked all of his races, to be honest. Those races in Japan, like no knocks. I think he was a little slog in one of them, no lead, on another. But I mean, just kind of overall, I mean, there's class. He's been here since Maidan. I mean, there was no going back home. It was, we're going to Kentucky, like right now, literally. So He's been on the grounds, ever since. I mean, we've seen the Japanese dominance, both at, the carnival and then during Breeders' Cup. So I know a lot of people are kind of like poo-pooing this horse based on the fact that no Dubai horse and, we've got to see it. But the thing is, you're going to wait until a horse wins. It's like eventually, it can happen. So if you're on the right horse, you should be compensated in odds, certainly. And I think that probably will be the case.
Yeah, it'll probably be 50, 60 to 1, I would imagine, right?
Yeah.
And you remember, I mean, Japan did pretty well in the Breeders' Cup last year too. They do well in all these global events. They, their horses come ready. They're usually healthy, and they come ready to run. And he kind of looks like I just saw the Dubai race, and he kind of looks like a grinder. He was on the wrong lead, so he's I wouldn't shock if he kind of said like grind it up for a piece. I'm just not sure. Just class-wise, he's as good as some of these, but who knows, right? I mean, just it's hard to gauge these some of these Japanese horses. They definitely outrun their odds when they come state-wise, or even when they go to some of the big global events. How do you say this? Tabia? I don't know.
I've been saying Taiba, but I have no idea. I have no idea how to say it.
Whatever, he's good. I mean, he goes from this kind of like a justified kind of run line, right? Almost. I mean, one of those horses where he breaks his maiden in March and then a sprint and then a route, with San Diego Derby, runs a huge race. And now he's in the Kentucky Derby. He's a Q1 square. So he's obviously
the biggest Q1
the biggest one. So, I mean, I don't know how you would kind of evaluate this. We talked about this being kind of a Bob Baffert horse, transition to Tim Yakine. Mike Smith rides. So, I expect Mike to be aggressive early, have this horse forward. And, he's not going to, Mike's not going to kind of try to finesse it, right? He's going to let them, if he thinks he's got the best horse, he's going to be forward in this race. And, he's going to be putting pressure now. We'll see how that all works out with some of the other speed horses in this race, but an obvious contender. It should be interesting. Would you think this horse could potentially be the favorite in this race? Just because of the lack of seasoning, right? He won't be, right? Just because of the lack.
I don't think he will be. No, I think Epicenter will be, and maybe you could make the case if it was still Bob Baffert. I think maybe that would be a stronger case that it might be closer, even though to what I was saying earlier, but I just think, you know, that name being in the past performances might drop at a point or something. I mean, he could be, but I think it'll be at the center.
Yeah, let's hope so. So, well, we'll see. I mean, the odds are going to play important.
I mean, he's not a horse he's a horse I'm like using as an A, but it's not a horse I'm going to make a win bet on no. You know, unless he is something super long, but then at that point that would make me more concerned than anything.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's sort of the way I would be.
What about if he's 6-1? He'd be maybe worth a win bet at 6-1. Wouldn't you think? I mean, if you like him, I mean, if that's something that you like, I mean, if you know, anything higher than that, you're right. If I'd be a little bit concerned, but we'll see. In fact, what we're going to do is I'm going to do we're going to have a focus reports available. If you go to our website, we're going to have what Focus does is actually lay out our fair value odds for each of the horses that day. And so stay tuned. Number 9, Simplification, doing the running in Florida. He's okay, but I think we thought he peaked. And I think we're right. I think he might have peaked, this horse. And I don't know. I don't know what trip he gets here. I just don't see it for Simplification. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't go. If the odds are long enough, you know, to use underneath, because, you know, could just kind of be in the right place at the right time. I mean, he's been pretty much consistently in the money, especially he's been in the money every race on dirt. You know, to use kind of underneath from that perspective, just based on his consistency. Right. But yeah, I mean, just as far as a top contender, he's tough to get there. I think he'll be, you know, a big price in this race too. So for people that do kind of like him, I think there will be compensation. Yeah,
he's okay. He's just, you know, it's again, you know, it's the other thing too is this is the first time he's going to be on a track that's not Gulfstream, so that's something else to pay attention to. Sometimes that Gulfstream form doesn't always translate, especially the fact that he hasn't any experience. That's a horse I would watch in the morning, see how he's training coming into the race. Smile Happy, you know, a little disappointing in the Bluegrass, don't you think, Emily? But still okay race, and he's another horse that's kind of got that nice gradual improve. He's got that number back as a two-year-old, that 94, that if he just kind of improves on that, definitely makes him a contender. He's another horse that's got to kind of find the trip. He was a little closer to the pace. I don't know if that's good or bad. You know, he's going to find himself, I think, more mid-pack this time. You know, so I think maybe that's better for him. Maybe that sets up his late run a little bit better. But again,
I think being close to the pace, sorry to cut you off, was based on the fact he kind of drew outside. So I think they kind of had to.
Yeah, and that's another thing we talked about is kind of the post position draw, which is huge, right? See where these some of these speed horses are drawn. But yeah, so you know, this is a horse I think is a nice horse and should be considered, definitely. I mean, I just think he's got kind of he's got kind of an improving pattern, and like I said, I think you know he's going to maybe get a different kind of trip, and a trip that's more kind of fits his run style. That's my guess in the Derby. The 11, Tony Port. This is the horse that you know came out of the Jeff Ruby Stakes. Tis the Bomb ran a good second. Our Lexington number came back really short. Now again, that was dirt, so his 2 dirt numbers just don't seem like they match up, Emily. In terms of figure. That's the concern.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was why we were kind of negative on him in the Lexington, was that he had to show it. And I think he was just kind of, you know, the best of the worst. I hate to say it, but, you know, I mean, just kind of, you know, somebody had to win, you know, and got the right trip. A couple other horses just didn't run for whatever reason. But yeah, I mean, looking at those 2 dirt numbers, he's slow. I mean, even looking at the Jeff Ruby Stakes, that 99 is probably not going to win this race.
Right. Yeah. The 12, at least.
And he's got a lot of gait issues. Sorry. Okay. Now we can move on.
Okay. Which is not good in the Derby.
No.
That's the other thing I know. Just the gate issues. I just want to mention because that's an important point in the Derby, and that's why I think Baffert also does well. One thing about Baffert's horses, they're pretty much all good gate horses. I don't know if he trains that way or whatever. I think that's such an advantage. I mean, I know he's maniacal about it, and I think that's such a kind of missed point. Even if you got a closer, getting out of the gate and be able to set your own position is so much more important than not, and then having been compromised to be used to get to the position you want to. So it's really important. When you see a lot of slogs, that's what we call them, SLOGs. Be a little eerie on the win end of horses like that, especially if you see more than one. Okay, Barbara Road comes out of those slow Arkansas races. I don't know. I mean, what do you think about Barbara Road? I'll let you.
Yeah, I mean, I as you can see, I mean, looking at his form, we can go back even, all the way to the beginning. He broke his maiden for a claiming tag, which, he's obviously been able to, improve and hold his form since, but there's, that class still have to kind of draw off that. And he's been consistent as far as, hitting the board, picking up checks. I mean, he earned his way in the hard way, kind of on points. But I mean, his grades wise is just B minuses, and there's no red, so it's like, right. It's not a knock, but where's his improvement going to come from? Like we've been kind of waiting for it. It hasn't really been there. Ran a 94 as a top in his most recent race to finish second. He's going to have to improve 10 more points off that to win this race. And even improve off that to kind of finish underneath and to find another trip. And I mean, he's a circle in quadrant 4. And I would imagine he's been a square. He's actually, I know for a fact, he's always looked really good on the plot in the past. Can we scroll over to that just to kind of see? Because I don't think he's ever been a circle in quadrant 4.
Well, he's always been squares. He's never been.
Yeah, in quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3. I mean, that third start, he was a surface distance quadrant 4 circle, but
way back down here,
but I mean, generally this is a big shift.
Yeah, so I'm tossing him. Okay. 13 Un Ojo. This is the horse that shocked in the rubble and then came back true to form in the Arkansas Derby. Just too slow, right?
Yeah, another quadrant 4 circle, and the deepest quadrant 4 circle.
Pass.
Below every other horse, except the 24, who we're going to imagine isn't participating, who's actually a square. Just too slow.
Early voting comes out of Woodland Memorial, ran huge. I don't know if they're going to run him, right? I guess they'll look for some other scratches or maybe how he trains coming up into the race, but he's potentially a scratch. But, I mean, he's just got to be considered off that huge Wood Memorial. Now, he did get an easy lead. And the other thing about Aqueduct, especially this, the past month or so, it's really been favoring horses forwardly placed, too. Another thing that you want to look at. O'Donegal, the fact that he's kind of overcame that. He kind of ran in the withers. He kind of just ran the horses off their feet. He's speedy. He will definitely impact the race. I don't know with the other speed in the race. Is he such a good win contender? But again, it's going to be a matter of price. If this horse just kind of gets overlooked coming out of a race where kind of got the highest speed figure on our grades, why not? But we don't know if he's even going to be in.
Yeah, I think they're leaning maybe not. And he's a quadrant 1. He's a quadrant 1 circle, kind of right in the middle. He's like halfway above, halfway below the par line. I would imagine. I mean, if anything, maybe even regression would be more concerning with him because that was just such a big jump.
Yeah,
in terms of speed figures. So, coming back in 28 days, the horse that's, they've had more time between starts. And I think, kind of reading between the lines a little bit, maybe if they go, that would be a positive sign.
Yeah.
But I mean, just kind of the fact they're sort of, kind of makes you a little bit negative too.
Well, it's again too. I mean, they never rush anyone. Brown used to work with Frankel, who never had horses in the Derby practically. So
this horse is out for certain.
Okay.
Yeah.
This could be interesting, right? I mean, no knocks on Messier. He's going to be another horse that comes out of that good Santa Anita Derby. He's been getting trips, and we were a little bit against him. I mean, you were in the Santa Anita Derby. Again, it was like it's the first time he's going to get some real pressure. He's going to get some real pressure in this race too, but another horse that's got this talent can't be kind of ignored. Any thoughts on this guy?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. I was negative on him because he's coming out of those races that, in my opinion, were weak. We have those 2 week keywords in there. The race that really soured me was that Los Alamitos Futurity, just where he was no finish, and then won off another weak race, had a perfect trip in the Santa Anita Derby. He's a quadrant square above the par line, so and I'm like, I think also too. I mean, I'm pretty good about leaving my bias out of the way, but just like with Medina Spirit winning last year, like I'm so much to toss this horse because I just don't think he's that good, and I think he's flattered off those trips. And then as a quadrant square above the par line, probably using him to some extent. Another horse that I'm certainly not making a win bet on. I know a lot of people, and this is probably like important to discuss, think that race is going to set him up for a move forward into the Derby. I'm kind of negative on that idea. I think he is who he is, and if he's, if what you see right there is good enough to win on Derby Day, he can win. But I don't see that, the super horse is going to come out of him right from the start. I mean, they debuted at Los Alamitos in June, which meant, they skipped, or,
Delmar,
yeah, there's, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I hear you. 17 Zozos.
He's also Queen's Plate eligible, I believe, as well. Just throwing
okay. I don't expect him there though, but
why not? Might be a cinch.
I don't know. That race is never a cinch. It's a different surface, and there'll be like 200 horses in that race, too. It's like the Derby in terms of field size. This is the horse that outran his odds in the Louisiana Derby. Well, to some extent, I guess she actually did. He got bet. I forgot. We thought
we were kind of. I was on that. I was like, he's going to be the second choice.
Yeah, you were. And you got the comment here though. You do the notes for Fairgrounds, so you got the comment turf. You think this horse is turfy?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. That the reason we were kind of like even liked him was that Oaklawn race came back strong. The allowance claimer that he ran his second race, an improving horse. Who knows? I mean, again, it's just a tough spot with the lack of experience and his run style. Because he just kind of likes to sit up close. What is he on the plot?
He's a quadrant 3 square.
Quadrant 3
square. Yeah.
Yeah. That could be good and bad. It all depends on the pace scenario. But I'm just thinking with the other speed, being quadrant 3 means that he might have a little bit of a difficult time keeping pace with the other horses who were in quadrant 1. So, but he's got some finishability, obviously. But it's probably because these races have been a little bit softer paced, and we know Louisiana Derby was right because he just. He was in the same race as Epicenter, who got kind of a soft pace. So I guess if you're not crazy about Epicenter, I mean, this horse will be a better price, but you may not be as crazy about him in terms of the pace scenario.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of the spot, and also in my opinion, sort of where I understood where the public was going, like where they were going to take him, because he looked like a horse, especially with the connections, that was on the improve. And that was kind of the spot that if he was the goods,
right,
I think he would have won.
Right, exactly. The 18 Summers tomorrow. This is the other horse that can't come out of the Dubai race. No excuse in that race, and I don't think going 10 furlongs is going to be what this horse wants. He kind of he ran okay. He was on a lead, but he looked like he was home, and he gave it up to the Japanese horse late. I got the comment there shorter. It just seems like just maybe distance. And then he's another horse that's got to deal with an early pace that looks like it's got some good runners in there. I mean, he may have some speed and he may be a pace factor, but that'd be about it for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's one I'll obviously watch, but at this point, watch train locally. I know he just kind of got on the grounds yesterday or today. But yeah, below.
Yeah. I wouldn't be using him in my exotics. I mean, I think he's going to be like a Q. He may be a below kind of pretty large Q1 circle or Q3 circle, smaller. One of those or two. I mean, he doesn't plot obviously, but that's how I would think he would look like on a plot if we did plot him. If we had those past performances. Charge It, Florida Derby, got kicked back in that race. No line, no lead. Another horse that he's a little hard to gauge. He ran really well in that in his maiden breaker. We kind of I thought he was getting an easy lead, but still ran a B+, 2 B+. Backed up a little bit, but a little bit of an excuse with the kickback. But what you're thinking on Charge It? This is the Pletcher.
I think he's a very quality horse, but I have distance concerns with him. And I think that's part of why you're seeing the no lead, no line, because he was still trying, right? It kind of looked like he was going to fade. He was going to fade to like fourth, and he just kept trying, but that distance really got to him. So he's a quad 1 circle. He's below the par line. That's my knock on him just in this particular race. As an individual, I think he has, a lot of upside.
Yeah, he's definitely a horse to watch going forward.
Could be a good miler. I mean, yeah. They have that other horse, Emmanuel, that I think will also probably be a miler too.
Happy Jack, I see you got a lot of one turn drop. It doesn't sound like this is the right profile race for him. Comes out of the good thing about him, he comes out of those races. But I mean, he finished third, but I mean, there was 5 horses in the race, I think, right? So
there are 5 horses in the race, and Forbidden Kingdom ended up kind of pulling up. So 4. So he kind
of backed into this points wise, right? Because
yeah. Because he's catching those smaller fields, and
What is he on the plot, Emily?
He is a quad. He's a circle right in the middle of the plot.
Okay. Pioneer Medina. I think this horse kind of outran his race Louisiana. His odds, I think. So another no line, which is always concerning. Didn't keep up with a pace that was kind of soft, right? This pace is going to be hot. I mean, it's good that his numbers are improving, but this pace is going to be a lot hotter.
Is he a horse? Is he a horse that really wants to be fourthly placed, though?
What would you think not? Why would you think not? I mean, that's how he runs. So what?
I know that's how he runs, but I just think because following him at the fairgrounds and just the way that those race shapes were, because he didn't run.
Let's see. So he's
he didn't run. He didn't. What was the race that was fast? The first one, the Lecomte. He wasn't in that.
No,
that was the pace that was really fast, and then the Risen Star was soft. It was a flow, and I think it was one of those that even with the plot, there really wasn't that much speed in there. I don't know. I mean, I guess that is the way he wants to run, but maybe it isn't at the same time. He is on the improve. I would say of the Pletcher horses, he might not be as quality as Charge It or some of the others. But distance-wise, maybe he handles it. I don't know. And more of an underneath again.
Okay. Where's he plotting? Let me see. I think I'll just look on the right side here. He plots as a Q1 circle. Okay. Well, that's a Q1 is where you can win it. All right. Well, maybe underneath. I don't know. I'm not too into him. In due time, I was disappointed with this horse's Lexington. I mean, he kind of gets. I don't know. He gets behind. Emily, you still there?
Yeah.
Okay. he kind of gets behind horses. And I thought he'd be like in the lead. So I don't think he's got the kind of gate speed. So he looks like, especially I'd be really worried if it draws down on the inside, because he's kind of like needs to be forward, but he doesn't have speed. And I just think he'll get buried. And it's just like his numbers are going the wrong way.
Yeah, I mean the Lexington was like really a disappointing race because I thought he had upside out of those two most recent Gulfstream Park races for a lot of reasons that you mentioned, where he is a bigger type. He looks like he wanted the added ground and should be better when he's outside of horses. And he was heavily bet in the Lexington. He ended up being favored. He wasn't favored on the morning line. I think he was maybe the third choice or so. And just took an excessive amount of money. And there was some traffic, but I mean, just right on the start, we watched enough races. You could just tell you're like, this isn't happening. This isn't
right.
So I don't know what happened there. Maybe wasn't handling the track. Maybe he runs better on shorter rest. One I'm going to kind of be watching a little bit, and then, whether they decide to go or not is a completely different story.
Yeah. If they get in, that's the other story, right? Because they're kind of, I guess, 22 right now, but should be able to get in.
Pioneer Medina. Yeah, he's sitting at 21.
21. Okay.
15 is out.
Yeah, he should be able to get in, especially if early voting goes. I think the draw is really important for this. So if he draws inside some other speed, I would be negative on it. I would like to see him actually probably maybe in that auxiliary gate, maybe a 15, 14, 16, one of those kind of positions where he can maybe be outside, because he did, like in the Fountain of Youth, he did improve when he got outside horses. So that's something to watch. Cathedral Road, I don't like him. I never did. He's too slow.
He's very slow.
Yeah.
He's very slow. I mean, I think it's hard for me to tell what he might have to go to the grid to find out what he is, because he's kind of in quadrant 4. I can't tell if he's like a square or a circle. Yeah, I mean, he's got the underneath use plot. So I would have no problem using him for underneath if they decide to go. Kind of seems like a horse that tries every time, but I mean, he is slow.
Yeah, but again, he's coming out of the Rebel was weak. The Bluegrass was okay, but he got beat bad in that race, and then the Lexington was soft. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Rich Strike comes out of the Jeff Ruby Stakes. Notice guy got a stretch and proven turf, and the horse galloped out well in that race. I haven't really looked at this, but other than like if you go back to his second race, he started in Ellis on the turf going long, didn't do any running, slow out of the gate. Then he's slow, but I mean, made 2 moves in that maiden claimer, and we gave him an A-, which is rare, right? So we just said this horse is way better than looks. And then they actually kind of move him up. First time versus winners gets a better than looked effort. And then kind of like next time we see him is right at the end of the year, and the gun runner doesn't do much running there. They get him on synthetic. He's shown a little bit of an improved line since he's been on Turfway. Interesting to see the stretch improve and the gallop out. I wonder if that's a horse that where's he plot in quadrant 4?
He is, what's the number there? 24? Yeah, he's the deepest runner in quadrant 4, but as a square. But he's like way in the bottom.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this may be an underneath horse. Maybe this horse is something that he's always wanted more distance. I don't know. It's hard to get. It's really hard to gauge some of those synthetic races. But I mean, if you look at him, Tizabomb, and Tony Port, I don't know. He's going to be like 5 times their odds. And if you're looking for some underneath, and again, we talked about squares versus circles. I don't know.
I'm not going to fault anybody for using a horse that's a massive price for underneath, but which he should be. But yeah, he's pretty much a confirmed deep closer.
Yeah. So.
And those were a little bit softer pace early. So even if they're fast early, he could be. Yeah, he's probably where he's plotted, where he's way so far off the pace.
Yeah. And sometimes,
that's tough.
That's tough on a win. but on a like a fourth, or especially if it's on a super or something where all the other horses kind of contending or backing up, coming home, that's something to can stay. Sometimes you can stay out of trouble being really last. 25 round and roll. I'm giving up on him. Emily. I mean, I was kind of liked him for both those, the Louisiana Derby and the Bluegrass. He's just kind of disappointed me.
The Louisiana Derby, to me, that was the race where he just kind of the same thing. It was like he was second off. He's going to run a good race. That was sort of the spot. He didn't. And then they're like, okay, we'll go to the Bluegrass. We'll take a shot. I mean, and just didn't improve off that. So, obviously the no push, but I think they're going to have to rattle and roll somewhere else. Where he wants to be.
Skippy Longstocking comes out of the Wood Memorial. Ran a huge race. Didn't that race doesn't kind of like compare with his other races. He got a set up in a race prior to the Aqueduct race at Gulfstream and Allowance Company. I don't know. To me, this horse is probably going to regress, but he's shown improvement. But it looks like his last two races, he's kind of really peaked because he ran nothing kind of close to those last two numbers until recently, and it's just like I don't know where they came from. And
he looks like he's over the top at this point. And he's been it's a plot change today as well. He's pretty much been quadrant 1, and today he's a quadrant. He was quadrant 1 circle 2 back. He was a quadrant 2 last out, and now he moves back to a quadrant 1 circle.
Okay.
Prior to that, he'd been a square.
Okay, and then the 27. Again, we're kind of who knows if these horses are getting in or not, but I don't know. Looks too slow to me, Major General.
Yes, yeah, he's like maybe even slower than Ethereal Road, and then just has the opposite pace scenario where he'd have to be up close with horses that are faster all around.
Golden Glider ran 4th in the Bluegrass. We had stretch and turf for this horse. We had this horse kind of as an improving, in Tampa, but he ran those Tampa races, didn't do so much. I mean, he hasn't hit the board in any of the graded stakes races, so I'm not.
Yeah,
if he gets
I don't. Yeah, he's got a lot of hurdles. It's another horse that certainly has ability. He's a quad 4 circle today, where he's been a quad 4 square in his most recent 4 races. Just a little bit overmatched.
Okay, so just want to go back to the plot for a second here. So if you look at the Q1, and again, just make sure that I just wanted to caveat this changes. And it changes daily, actually, as Emily said. Emily, you're saying that this has changed since this, even, right? You thinking? Since yesterday?
The plot has changed?
Yeah.
I don't think so. Let me.
Oh, okay. I thought you said it changed. If you just kind of look at this, you see the.
No, this is the same as what's up right now. Yeah, okay. Identical.
So you got the Q1 runners that we've talked about being, the ones that do well from a win perspective, and then underneath horses you want to be looking at squares so you can kind of see it. It gives you kind of layout of it, and then circles and quadrants 3 and 4 bad. So this will change more, and we'll have this in our report, in our focus report, as part of our Derby package. So if you go to OptixEQ.com and you see, when you go to buy, you'll see there's a Derby package. What we do is we give you the tracks information grid plot for all the tracks those 2 days, Friday and Saturday, and then we're going to do a special report on Friday and Saturday where we really kind of detail and lay out our analysis for both all the races on the Oaks card, undercard, and also the Derby. And so yeah, you can go and see last year's, you know, if you want to understand what information we give, I think it'd be useful for you. If you go there, you go to see this Kentucky Derby and you can look at the reports from last year. So, yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting Derby. It's going to be interesting as, you know, these kind of field always evolves a little bit with scratches and so forth. I think a big scratch will be early voting when he comes out. That might change that quadrant one a little bit, Emily. Might see some things fall out there. But I think, you know, if Epicenter is going to be the favorite, I think there's, I think he's going to be vulnerable. Just
yeah.
right.
The more that we looked at it and kind of pulled out a few other points, definitely looks vulnerable as the favorite.
Yeah. So I think that's it. I think we've covered this. You know, maybe leading up to the Derby, we'll have a couple more. And sorry for the initial issues with the live broadcast. We were kind of like we're doing this on the fly a little bit. Yeah, well, maybe we'll do a couple leading up. Maybe there'll be some plot changes, Emily, and we'll cover them on a YouTube live.
Or maybe not. Maybe we'll leave it just to subscribers. We'll have to see.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's going to change right up to the last day too, so that's going to be interesting. So, yeah, that sounds good. Anyway, well, thanks for joining us, Emily. Thanks for hanging in there. And any comments out there, Emily? Do you see anything?
No, just a lot of thanks. So thank you guys for watching. Hit the like button. That helps with the rating. So yes, definitely please do that if you haven't already. Subscribe if you haven't already. Looks like a lot of speed signed up. Best closers. I mean, as we've talked about, I don't know if it's a lot of speed in early voting. We'll kind of change that a little bit. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that's it.
Again, yeah, it's going to be interesting. It always is. The Derby's been you know, a lot more formful too in the last, you know, I guess since they've gone to the qualifying, these races have been more formful. And I just think this qualification thing is good. I think they should do the same thing with the Breeders' Cup. Instead of having a win and you're in, you know, you got to earn it to get in instead of just one race. But what do I know? So that's it for Emily and John, OptixEQ. Thanks a lot. Thanks for everyone joining. And check us out at OptixEQ.com. We got a lot of good Derby stuff. Again, the report is really good. And it's actually worth the price of the whole thing, but you get all our stuff with it. So it's good to do it. All right, everyone. Take care. Bye.
Bye.